All right, we're going to wait one more minute, and then we'll get started. Somebody will be our timer. Natalia, will you be our timer? Is it?
4:01. Is there a clock? It's time.
I'm going to restart the clock. How about that? All the troublemakers in here, I'm noticing. Lots of troublemakers in this.
I know.
Yeah. You said hecklers?
Get ready. I have this banana peel. What am I doing?
All right. Thanks for joining us today. Really quick, we're going to do some intros, and then I'll get started. Alana, you want to?
Hi, all. I am Alana Hines, if you weren't here this morning. I currently am an independent consultant. I live in North Carolina and 17 years in the cooperative space. And on Monday, you may see me under the NCG tag, but today, I'm all me.
My name is Sam McCormick. My pronouns are they, them, or he, him. I'm the general manager at Aspect Co-op Market in Maynard, Massachusetts, which is close to Boston. Otherwise, no one knows where it is. I've been in the co-op world off and on for a number of years. I used to be in Philly at Mariposa Food Co-op in Philly, and I'm now currently on the NCG Board of Directors. So, yeah.
The rest of the board of directors just so happens to all be here congregating in the same area. I'm Gabby. I use she, her pronouns. I am the board treasurer for Detroit People's Food Co-op. Yay. Yeah, thank you. I also work for NCG as the Equity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement Manager. My title is new. They just changed it. So I'm getting used to that. I don't have any decades of experience in co-ops. I have 3 years, which all have been at NCG. So, yeah. We don't have any relevant conflicts. We do have community agreements, though. It's always a priority that you take care of yourself. Many of you who've seen me present have seen a version of this slide. The bottom part is still there. I just wanted it to come in last. There's nothing we have to say that's more important than you taking care of you. The other thing, they're recording this for that little package they sell. But we require that they offer it for free as well, since we're not being paid. So free work should be free, and so it'll be available somewhere on the YouTubes also. So if you miss something or you feel like you missed something, you'll still have access to it. We believe in decolonizing time. Also, everybody up here is long-winded. So we will try not to go over. If we do, we encourage you to leave if you need to. But if we go under, we won't create fluff, so you have to stay. Right? So there's pluses and minuses to it. All right. Feel free to interrupt us. You don't have to wait to the end. I often can't wait to the end to get my questions out. So just, raise your hand. Wait for a second so somebody from the board will bring you a microphone so we can be accessible to everybody in the room. With that, does anybody have any accessibility concerns that you think we can support during this time together? Can everybody hear us okay? Okay. All right. Okay. Cool. A loose agenda, and again, long-winded, them more than me. I'm going to cover connectivity and inclusivity and well-being, and I'm going to try to stay on topic. They have lots of notes, none of which they'll use, likely. But we do, it's roast session now. It's the end of the day, But we do include y'all to ask questions. You know how that question you have in your mind that you're embarrassed to ask? This is the time to ask it, right? Being mindful that you are being recorded. So, say your name, if you want to have your question so we know who you are. But if you don't want people to know, don't say your name when you get started. So just know, this is not a safe space. This is a safer space. We don't know everybody's triggers. Safe spaces don't exist.
Yes.
All right. So these are the 4 things I'm going to talk about as brief as I can be. Outside of NCG, I work as a mental health therapist. So some of these topics are really near to my heart. And right now, I have clients both that work at co-ops or are connected to co-ops in Michigan and in Idaho. And so some of those things might sneak in. Okay? All right. So mental health in the workplace, it's important to say that 69% of retail workers experience burnout, right? The other statistic I often share that hasn't changed in the last 3 years is that retail workers are also second most to receive urinary tract infections for not taking care of themselves, not drinking enough water, not finding time to pee. I'm assuming that general managers are probably the worst at this because they usually wear 19 to 21 hats minimum, right? For the general managers that's in here, how many of you work less than 50 hours a week? Thank you. And can you raise your hand if you're a general manager? All right, perfect. Onward. I have nothing else to say about that. That was just an experiment so y'all can see for yourself. And then food retail, specifically co-ops, have other things to think about that maybe not big box stores might have to think about. A lot of times when you come in for work, if you work 8 to 4, you leave at 4, right? Where if a truck come late, you might have other people that decide to stay because of the mission of the co-op or whatever the case may be. So a lot of the hours are irregular. Just recently at Detroit People's Food Co-op, we had 3 compressors go down at the same time, coincidentally. And I'm on the board, so I'm like, oh, that sounds bad. But I was also behind the computer saying it. But the people, in the co-op, they have to deal with that. And so because of their love for the co-op or their connectivity or engagement with the co-op, they were willing to stay behind and throw out the ice cream or whatever. I don't know. I work for grocery stores, but I don't know grocery words. So I'm sure a lot of things had to happen. And there was a lot of people that pitched in to help do that. That might not happen at Walmart. I'm almost positive it doesn't happen at Walmart. I'm pretty sure they're going home. And then mission-driven fatigue. Like we talk about cooperative principles all the time. And you might have coworkers that are not in alignment with those cooperative principles, but still work there. And it's hard to do if you are in alignment and your other coworkers are not. And then community accountability. Co-op workers, and I would say even more so the general manager, have a lot of ties to different communities. So for a general manager or CEO, they are reporting to their staff, their leadership, their board, their community, and if you're an NCG member, and NCG. It's probably true if you're an infra member too. There's somebody else. So they have all these places to, report to, and that can be overwhelming as well. All these things culminate together that can give you either a positive or negative experience or somewhere in between. And then mental health isn't separate from equity and inclusion. They are all important. Every time I talk to my parents or anybody in their friendship group or generation, they have a really different idea about this because they associate taking care of your mental health maybe with laziness or things because the stigma around it that wasn't talked about during their generation. You either go lay down or go drink some water. Those are really the 2 options for you to do. And so having those conversations might vary based on generation or culture, where also mental health is not something you talked about outside of the house. Come on. Intersectionality, those things that is important too. I'll use myself as an example. The way I navigate is a lot different from many other people, so I have all these things that culminate, again, to either provide a positive or negative experience, depending on where I am. And so using Idaho, because I always do. It's always thank you, Melinda. Melinda's from Idaho, or works in Idaho now. But intersectionality for me, it looks like traveling. Let's say I'm in Idaho and I am existing as a fat black queer person, and I could go into the one gay bar in Boise and feel safe enough due to me being queer, but not because I'm black though. And so I'm like, ooh, other queers, yay. But at the same time, the music is changing because they see me come in, and all of a sudden we going from Britney Spears to Beyonce. Like how, and you can tell, like those are things, and so that's not a safe space for me. Another example I can share, during COVID, due to what was happening in that state, we were stopped from wearing our uniforms. I worked as a respiratory therapist at the beginning of COVID, or BC, before COVID, like I want to say. And because of what was happening in Idaho, they stopped us from wearing our uniforms to work. And so that looked like us wearing our regular clothes and then change when we got there. But at the hospital, they had 2 change rooms or locker rooms. for men and women, which is a whole nother hour-and-a-half session about why that's problematic. But in the locker rooms, they had in the women's locker room, they had sizes extra, extra small to extra large. In the men's locker room, they had medium to 5X. So in this space, women can't be big and men can't be small, right? And so each time, again, I am in this space, I am a fat person working in healthcare. I had to go ask one of the two men in my department, both of which, of course, I didn't like, which is a whole nother thing, to go get the size because I needed a 2X to go in it. So sometimes you have these things that can culminate together that can create a psychologically unsafe environment. So it's important that we think about all of those things, all the isms and all the phobias that can arrive. Neurodivergent friendly spaces help everyone. The ADA is trash because it hasn't been updated since 2008. Oh, that's recorded. But said what I said. So, it hasn't been updated since 2008, and to be honest, it never really prioritized mental health anyway. And so a lot of times the accommodations that we are requesting are usually free and usually helps more than one person. An example of that is having doors that open automatically. That might help the person using a wheelchair, but it's also going to help an elder that doesn't have the strength to open that door anymore, or a parent who has a bunch of offspring and have a bunch of bags too, right? Or thinking about the hospital, it's like having stairs that, yes, everybody could use them if they wanted to or if they had the ability to, but having an elevator would include more folks. And so when it comes to neurodivergent friendly workplaces, like having things like sensory bags or dimming the lights to a certain extent in certain areas. Potsdam Co-op, it's a co-op in a tiny town in New York. Is anybody here from Potsdam? No. They did this thing at the register where they turned down the lights and nobody even noticed. Like they was just out, they just turned it down. And they was like, man, it's so much calmer in here. Like, what's changed? And they was like, oh, I don't know. But they had turned down the lights at the register, right? And so it was a lot more traffic coming in. But again, sometimes that one thing can help a lot of people. The last example I shared, how many people here wear glasses or had LASIKs? Yeah, I see y'all. All of you had an accommodation, right? Most of us are either disabled or temporarily able-bodied. So you might be in a space now where you feel like you don't need anything, but at some point you will, or you have in the past. So just keeping that in mind, like changing those spaces for one person will help a group. And then inclusion improves mental health outcomes overall. Suicide rates are up, especially since, and this is just preliminary research, since November of 2024, like after the first week or so. And I'm interested to see what those studies do prove, but a lot of that can be from work, what the things we have to experience at work. We know that co-operators are experiencing very interesting things at work. A lot of humanity is called political right now, and those could drive different stressors. Me personally, I've had conversations with my clients about increased self-harm in places that are psychologically unsafe, including work. And self-harm is like physical self-harm, like cutting. And we see increased use of legal substances with the nicotine, whether that's via vaping, cigarette, hookah, or chew, and alcohol. So keeping those in mind, like including those things, including people overall, and allowing folks to feel like they belong in a space can improve overall well-being as well. Job satisfaction. I don't think nobody includes loves their job or is satisfied 100%. We also shouldn't be shooting for that or working towards that, trying to take out that language. But it does lead to retention if you like your job. And it becomes recruitment too, because you tell people, right? That's the thing. And so, at my last job before I came to the co-op space, while the system I worked for wasn't inclusive, wasn't diverse, my department was. And it was very easy for me when a job came up for me to tell my friends to come apply in my department, right? And so they didn't have to do it in recruiting in that space. The other thing, and this is where y'all don't have to stop me from getting on the soapbox, the word diversity in the way it's used, and some of you have heard me say this before, I think there's a hyper focus on diversity, and because everybody assumes when they hear that, not everybody, a lot of people assume that we're talking about race, and that's it, and that's the foundation. And race is important, but sometimes when we hyper-focus on diversity, it can cause harm. Equity, inclusion, however, those are things you can do on purpose. And the outcome of being intentional with equity and inclusion is diversity passively, right? And so just, again, the example I just gave, me feeling included and feeling I'm treated equitably, me telling my friends about it, it will cause passive diversity, especially because most of my friends are either black, brown, or queer, right? And so those things happen because you feel included, right? And so, and I just want to mention this because I heard it in so many sessions. For co-ops, raise your hand if you're at a co-op in a predominantly white area. Okay. There's a hyper focus on that. Like, well, how do we make, the number one question when I started at NCG in 2022, I wish I would have counted it, was we want to make our boards more diverse. We want leadership to be more diverse. We want our customer base to be more diverse. Nobody said what they meant by diversity, but it was implied. We have, including the board, the NCG board also had these same goals, and that's great. But in certain places, it's not achievable solely based on demographics, right? And so I say that if you do it on purpose, like if I show up to let me see, I'm gonna say Vermont because I was just there, and the board is all black, big red flag, big red flag, because that mean you collected everybody. Like how you do that, right? So there's no expectations. Like I fully expect to see in predominantly white spaces, predominantly white people in those spaces, and in boards and those things like that, right? If you bring people into a space solely to create diversity without preparing that space to receive them, it's an act of violence, whether it's race or not, no matter what it is, right? Let me get off. I'm gonna hop off the soapbox because I had something else to say, but we'll come back if they leave time. Any questions about that, about the violence? I know I said violence, and that could be triggering for some people. All right. It also leads to people want to stay at the co-op longer and put in for leadership positions. I know a lot of times we include or encourage people to like, hey, you would really be good at that. But if you feel included, you might feel valued enough to believe that without somebody telling you. Like, let me go apply. Maybe this is a space I could cross train in. Leads to increased community engagement as well. And again, community could be in the store, could be out of the store. Some of the feedback I've gotten from folks in leadership or on boards is where the employees don't want to participate because it's not paid to be on a board, if they're a board that allows, worker owners. But that you might get that if they feel valued enough, this is my place, yes, I work here, but this is my spot too. I have a sense of having a somewhat safer, especially psychologically safe space. You might get more of that. And so the engagement could be in the community, or it could be folks bringing back things they've learned in the community to help with the co-op. Right. An example for that, there are a lot of spaces that I get to be in that my colleagues don't. So for instance, Up and Coming Food Co-op Conference is a conference every year that caters to co-ops that are not open yet, but there's a lot of people who work at co-ops that are open that comes there. And every year, not every year, but the last 3 or 4 years, 5 years, they've had a Black-led day, right, for Black people to be in. But the things that I learn about in those spaces or in those sessions, I do bring back with consent to help better whatever the work I'm doing or whatever the work my colleagues are doing. And so if you have employees, that are working in a safer place, they're satisfied like 80% in their job, you might get the perks of learning what they get to learn in the community. Right? Acceptance, everybody's definition of safety is different. My first time coming to CCMA, I had just started working at NCG. This was a very unsafe place for me, for no particular reason, because I know nobody. Right. I also didn't know what half the acronyms were that people use. I did a lot of Googling beforehand, but I was just kind of feeling my way around, trying to learn just as a person new to the co-op space. And sometimes not knowing can create an unsafe space, but just know that everybody has a different idea, of safety. Acceptance is more important than understanding, usually. I've said that to a lot of people in this room too. It's always a shock. I think we as humans, especially the adult flavor, we feel like we need understanding in order to move something forward, or to understand somebody's experience, but you don't. You just have to accept it. Because it's really not your business their experience, unless they ask you. Or, unless they want it to be. And so I'll share a really quick story, and then I'll move on. Some of you have heard it. In 2023, I was able to go on a nursing cruise to be a speaker at NurseCon. It was nurses going wild. Everybody was drunk. Like, all the nurses were drunk. Like, it was. But they go on there. They're supposed to get CEUs for learning, whatever. It was free for me, so I went. And so I was doing a session about providing trans-affirming healthcare. And we got to the end of the session, almost the end of the session. It's Q&A time, and a woman stands up and she says, I'm 70. I was like, oh. So sometimes when we start as our descriptors, sometimes it's like, I'm about to say something, and this is why it's okay, or this is why that. So it's 150 people in here. So I'm just like, okay, congratulations. Like everybody is congratulating. Like, you look good, girl. And then next thing she was like, well, I've been a nurse for 40 years. Again, we clapped. Thank you for sharing that. And then she was like, well, I understand how boys can like boys and girls can like girls, but I don't understand how a boy can want to be a girl and a girl can want to be a boy. You need to make me understand so I can treat my patients better. My wife is there. She's in the back of the room. She's shaking her head like, oh no. Like, she's preparing. She's red. Everything is red. And so we had a good little conversation. Some words stronger than others. But I asked the rest of the group. I said, who else is uncomfortable with trans people? And about 75% of the group raised their hand. And I thanked them, like, thank you for being vulnerable. And I said, and it's okay that you don't understand their experience, but you have to accept that they exist. And you still have to serve them in the same way. You're not going to understand a trans person's experience. You're not going to understand a black woman's experience, but you have to still accept it. That is their experience. It's not your business, or it's not up to them to tell you about all of it, especially since Google is free. So you might just, with some starters. And so I wanted to mention that on purpose because we can't always go with understanding. Well, I need to understand it too. That's not true. We accept our wages. Here we are, still getting paid the same, and we made a decision to stay, or whatever the case may be. We've accepted coming to this conference. I had to go upstairs and get water because I was thirsty because they didn't have none down here. It didn't stop me from going to get water. I had to accept that it's upstairs and I had to go get it. Right. And so we accept things all the time that we don't understand. We move on. And we have to do the same thing with people and their experiences as well. Acceptance forces you to shelf your bias because sometimes you can't correct it in a moment. Like we all are doing work on our own implicit and unfortunately explicit bias, including me. I talk about bias a lot and I still have it. Right, and so we're all on the journey together. The important thing is that you're able to shelve it in a moment to reduce harm or not have harm at all. Oh, look at that. It mitigates harm that can happen when you don't mind your own business. So if you accept things, ask questions if you need to know, but most of the questions that adults ask, more so than children, are based on curiosity, right? And it reduces stress. When I said that to those nurses there, like, you don't have to understand to accept that they exist and treat them with respect, everybody just dropped their shoulders like, phew. Because they are, and a lot of us, whether we say it or not, or agree in this room or not, a lot of us feel that, like, we got to understand, I just don't get it. You don't have to, you just have to accept it. Move on. And inclusion is not equal to representation or diversity. That's the absolute bare minimum. And again, you could cause harm by doing it the wrong way. Asking people to be in a space. This is the last story I'll share, and then I'll move on. When I lived in Idaho, me and a friend of mine, for like 4 semesters, we taught a class to therapists, other mental health therapists, about providing trans-affirming health care. At the end of it was a 2-day class. At the end of the class, we had a panel. And the panel was with trans people with lived experience. It's always important that you, for anything, if you can include people with lived experience and pay them, you should, right? And so how I got the panel to come is I called them or texted them and said, hey, I'm teaching a class, a bunch of cishet folks trying to be better. We're talking about providing trans-affirming health care. Would you come and be on the panel? I have $100 or whatever I had. And they agreed to come. The ones that are available agreed to come. And that's not considered tokenization because I did not lie about what they were walking into, right? In that same impact or same context, there are some folks that could reach out to me like, hey, we need some queers. You queer, come on. Be on this panel or do this. Or we need you to come here. It's white. That's what I need to know. I need to know all important things. Let me know what I'm walking into to give me the option to make the choice to participate or not. When I say it's an act of violence to bring people to places not ready to receive them, if you say something like, I really appreciate your leadership experience, and you just met me 2 weeks ago. That's not a thing. You don't know my leadership experience, right? So say those things, even if you are uncomfortable, because again, that's the bare minimum you can be, is uncomfortable. A lot of folks skip some of these things because they're worried about tokenizing folks. How many people are worried about tokenizing other people? Yeah, and as you should be. Like, it is a worry to have. But a tokenization is the absence of truth, right? That's it. And so the more details you are able to offer for asking somebody for their time, their experience, especially if it includes one of their identities, the better. You could still hear a no. That means, again, you have to be okay with rejection, which is fine. So don't let the fear of hearing no stop you for putting yourself out there to get the learning that you need. All right. And then a few tools, mental health, first aid training. A lot of these things you can find online for free 99. Flexible scheduling and cross training. That's helpful to the person, but also helpful to the co-op as well. Like, people call in all the time from what I hear, right? How many co-ops here do not have any open positions? All right. That point was made. That was pretty easy, huh? Oh, just one? Who put it up real low? Oh, he said. Yeah, but most co-ops do have open positions. So what would it be like if there was an opportunity to cross-train? Access to therapy and EAPs or employee assistance programs, if you have that, make sure you talk out loud about it to your employees. Some of them might not have a good experience that's, based on the program, but still talk about it. Make sure they know usually EAPs are sessions per issue and not per year. A lot of folks are confused about that, so make sure you say that out loud. And also let them know that your boss won't know if you go, like it's against the law for them to report back who uses EAP. The co-op is already paying for it, just to be clear, and it's massively underutilized, not just in the co-op space, but overall, because there's mistrust, right? Clear paths to raise concerns without retaliation, and that's how you make a psychologically safe environment. And psychological safety just means that people feel safe enough to bring up their concerns, ideas, without fear of retaliation or being treated wrongly just because they brought up an idea, or to bring up near misses. I know Briar Patch uses this word, near misses, like you almost made a mistake, but then you caught it, but you sharing it so other people can have that information to stop it or mitigate it from happening in the future. So we are creating a psychologically safe space by doing all the things we talked about already. And then the last one, regular wellness check-in. Oh yeah, go ahead. Yes, I'll let, if somebody else, I'll give it to the medical context, and I feel like I should let somebody with lived experience of working in a co-op provide that. A near miss, and it did start in the medical field, is, let's say I almost gave wrong medication to a patient, but I caught myself, and something had to happen, whether somebody was able to talk to me in the space they weren't. Usually when we draw on meds, nobody is supposed to talk to you. Usually it's a red circle in some areas. So that could be it. I almost made a mistake, but let me report it so we can learn from it. It's basically restorative justice in a different way. Like, we're still doing some of those things. Go ahead.
Can you go a little deeper on the concept of how do you clear path to raise concerns about retaliation? Because I think there's a difference between, there's a clear path, and I feel comfortable using the path without fear of retaliation.
Yeah, the path is never comfortable though, is it?
I don't know if it is or not. It's not for everybody.
I think so. So, it's recorded. So when I first started at NCG, the person that hired me, her name is Allie Mintzer. I love her dearly. I felt very safe to bring up, like, ooh, kind of messed this up, help, right? And so sometimes I'm very direct. And so oftentimes I would send her my very direct emails, like how soften this up or what to do because they're not ready. And I felt good about doing that. In previous jobs, I wouldn't have been able to do that. Not only would I have not been able to send it to her, I probably wouldn't have written them at all, right? Sometimes when I'm direct, there might be covert retaliation, if you will. I say a lot of uncomfortable things to a lot of people at co-ops, and sometimes my boss gets emails about things. And so, in working with Allie, I knew that there have been times some things have happened, like somebody was upset about absolutely nothing for being called in or called out, and they've sent her an email, and I didn't even hear about it for months because she's already handled it. So I didn't have to worry about those things. And so I know that, like, if I have a concern, I could bring it to her, right? And I wasn't worried about, or if I messed up, like, and so I'm 42, so it's taken me a long time to get to this space too, life experience wise. Like, hey, I really messed up, but I need to tell other people too, so they don't have the same experience. Do you one of y'all want to provide one when you get for the co-op space? Sure. No, when you get to y'all part, it'll come to you. Or if anybody else wants to share a time they made a mistake or almost made a mistake. Yeah. Oh, everybody here, perfect. Did that answer your question? I kind of started. Come back to it. Ask me again a different way. Think about it and come back to me, because it could just be my ADHD. And then care interviews too. That's actually that terminology I actually heard from Sarah. It's just checking in with employees overall throughout their time at the co-op to see, like, hey, how you doing? Where you at? It doesn't necessarily have to be a mental health thing, but to see how they're feeling, because that might impact overall. I hate to use the word, but oftentimes they have to create things to make a business case, but it might help with productivity. Just somebody asking how you doing. With my work and being in spaces making folks uncomfortable on purpose usually, there's a lot of debriefing I have to do on my own. But every once in a while, some of my colleagues or some members might send me an email like, hey, how you doing? And it feels really good to get that. And so that could even be, something like, hey, I know your work is difficult. Not directly asking me about it, but like seeing where I am. Any questions? You want to restate your question? Do you have it yet?
I haven't. I'll make another go at it.
Okay.
How do you create a space that feels safe enough that an employee is comfortable
Yeah.
raising a concern without fearing retaliation?
Yes.
Particularly a younger
Yes.
employee, right? Like going to a superior who's like,
Yes. Okay, I got you.
"Got
Well, it's not going to be comfortable. That won't probably happen where comfort exists. But how you do it is modeling mistakes. Oftentimes in place, like if I'm not at NCG presenting at a conference, I have errors in my presentations, usually just because I made an error, but there's nobody correcting them, and I'm not going to do it either. And so sometimes, and I think I made an error here also by mistake at some point on the slides. But sometimes modeling, like, you can make mistakes and come back from it. We need more leaders to do that. Another one is saying, I don't know. Adults, again, the adult flavor of humans, we suck at it. We like to know things. Yeah. And so in a space, especially with groups of people, being vulnerable enough to say, I don't know. It's always better to say, I don't know electively than pretending you know emergently. It'll always come back to haunt you. So yeah, I think modeling vulnerability is how you do that, and modeling mistakes. Yeah.
So if I could add to that, I think also creating an atmosphere of curiosity. Oftentimes managers are expected to know everything and figure everything out, which makes it even harder. So people see if my team makes a mistake, then I'm making the mistake, and bullies bully people. So it really is that thing of, if it's going to come on me, it's going to be even worse for you. But if the idea, just in the overall atmosphere and in the norm, that everybody's going to be curious and you fail forward, then really it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I made that mistake. And some mistakes are huge and some mistakes are costly. But if you genuinely look at it as, this is what we're going to learn, and sometimes you need to learn with the write-up. Sometimes you knew what you were doing, but a lot of times if it really is a question of, oh, I just didn't know, because you have so many different people. There are 5 different age groups in the workforce. So you have a lot of different things, not just the race and the gender and the age, but words that worked 50 years ago don't work now. But if it really is a thing of, you're trying really hard because you essentially You don't want somebody to walk in and say, I'm going to know 100% of my job when I walk in here. You want somebody to learn. This is a training environment. But if it really is a thing, if you can't fail, that's going to permeate throughout your culture.
I think modeling what we call failure too, what we think are failures. And my threshold is high. I can make mistakes all the time. I'm like, oh, messed that up. And we just can't, we kind of keep going. You make amends when you cause harm and you keep going. But we do need more leaders to do that. Not only inside the co-op, but at the board too. I think customers also need to participate. They are part of the atmosphere too. And some of us believe in a very archaic idea of customer service. But they have some accountability as well to create safer places for employees too. Any questions for me? It's Sam's turn to be long-winded. So, yes.
Giving recommendations on how to, the last thing that you said about how to involve customers in creating inclusive, safe spaces.
Yeah. I think all of the ways, whatever ways we use to market to customers what we have, we should be marketing to customers how to treat our staff as well. There was a general manager at Bellingham Co-op. Her name is Lisa. I can't think of her last name. But recently, obviously there's lots of things going on, due to things happening in the White House and their impacts. And Lisa wrote something on Instagram. It was like a slide. I don't know what it's called because I'm 42, but however Instagram works, but it was a long message to members. And Lisa was a new general manager new to the co-op, new general manager. And at the end of it, because we use Instagram for marketing, at the end of it, she signed her name. And what was significant to that, and I don't know if she did this for that reason, she was very direct about where she stood as the co-op general manager, but signing her names also said something like, I'm saying this, so if you have something to say, come to me and not my employees. There was another co-op who made some information public about wages and about not receiving dividends. And instead of, because they come in, the people that's going to complain going to immediately go to front end, right? Front end has the least amount of resources at most co-ops. And so instead of the front end having to deal with, the front end was given a stack of cards with a number to a hotline. They set up hotlines the day after this information came out. So instead of the front end having to deal with it, they had to call and talk to people, and the people answering were folks in senior leadership to deal with that. So just little stuff like having an employee food pantry that includes produce and not just the stuff that's too ugly to go out. Like those are the ways we create safer spaces, but tell the customers about it too. Like these are the things that we are doing for our employees. And then making statements that are backed up about the things that we will not tolerate. You can only have so many chances of abuse. Abuse comes in so many forms. And I know we welcome everyone to co-ops. But sometimes people need to be unwelcomed to co-ops too. Sometimes employee safety is most times, all times employee safety is more important than customer satisfaction. Yeah. All right. Sam?
Well, I don't have to do anything because I think Gabby covered all my stuff. Can y'all hear me okay? Great. All right, so we're going to talk about some workplace strategies. So it does get into some of the questions that started to come up, right? What do we do? How do we do this? Like, how do we create these spaces? What if we have a space that kind of sucks? Whether we inherited it or we were participating in it, right? How do we change it if it isn't fitting? If you're attending sessions like this, it's making you question how you do things at your co-op. Are we basically all up here telling you that you're doing it wrong, go away? Or are we saying, no, there's actually ways that you can adjust what you're doing and that you can modify things and that you can be change? And I say yes, that's the goal here. So kind of looking at what we have as inclusion beyond compliance. We are set up in a way that gives us many ways to fail, right? We're community organizations. We're full service grocery stores, most of us are. We have a board of directors, and we can have a staff that's anywhere from like 5 people to hundreds and hundreds of people, right? So how do we collectively support each other in doing things differently and not saying because it's been done this way, this is how we will continue to do it, right? So it comes back to some of the boring stuff, but the boring stuff it has a couple of purposes. We think about policies. What is the point of having a policy? It gives us a guideline. It gives us an outline. And I have some great employment attorneys that I've worked with over the years, and I've worked in mostly at-will states, right? And it means you basically write yourself into or out of many problems. And so a lot of organizations, we have this fear that we're going to write ourselves into a lot of problems. So we have these, it's like, Gabby, I want to give you our employee manual. And then, Gabby's crushed under the weight of our policy book because we're like, we can't have any mistakes. Because if we have a mistake or our policy book is not specific enough, somebody's going to do a thing and then we're going to get sued, and right? And then we kind of go through these cycles. And so I remember back in the day with an established co-op I was working with, and then in setting up a new one, to have this opportunity to go, okay, well, what is our policy book going to look like? Because we get to make it from scratch. And I had people send policy books, and we all love to share stuff, right? So there's this endless amount of books that exist. And we had an attorney working on it, and we spent too much money on the attorney working on it. And we had a set of policies, and it technically met the stuff that we wanted. And I got the finished copy, and I was like, I can't give this to staff. Because it goes against all of the training that I just did with all of our new employees. It doesn't go against the technical details, but it goes against the goals that we have as an organization. It doesn't leave any humanity, really, in it. And I've been that employee. I've been like, why? Why do we have this policy? I don't want to be held. Why would I then turn around as a manager and hold people to policies that are not going to meet their needs, it's not going to meet them where they're at? And kind of thinking through this, it's meant that we've released policies as we have the capacity to deal with them. Some of them are situational. We try to do it non-reactively, but it means we do the most urgent ones first, and we kind of work backwards. But before any of that, you have to go, what is the thing that we want to do? So we think about intentional design, think about universal design. We did that when we were building the physical store, so why wouldn't we do that when we're talking about how we care for people, right? So intentional and universal design says that if it doesn't meet the needs of somebody with the least accessibility, somebody who has the most issue with accessibility in a space, that we're, number one, not meeting that person's needs or those folks' needs, but the side dish main benefit is that it actually helps everybody. So the doors being automatic, right? You know what that helps with? When I came in to get one thing, and then you leave, and you're like, but I don't want a bag.
It's a business case.
It's a business case, right? And that's my job. We talk about this, and especially in the startup space and thinking about building something from scratch, or in this other context, if you have an established space and you're basically saying we need to deconstruct this and rebuild it, either way, you have to operationalize a dream. That's what we do, right? And what we often have, the rub that we have, is that our ideals can be so far beyond reality that we can't draw it. So I have ADHD. It's a thing. It's probably also why I have the job I have, because, hate being bored, and Gabby's note on never less than 50 hours of work, right? But there's an interesting concept when we think about, well, what are the struggles, what are the benefits? There's often, I say that it's a superpower, right? It's like I have an extra battery pack that other folks don't have, right? And I can get so much more done in one very short period of time. But there's some drawbacks, and it's starting things can be really hard, right? And I was reading some stuff about it, and folks are finally doing some more work around this. And why is starting stuff so hard? Why is procrastination such a joke, right? Oh, you have ADHD, you procrastinate on everything. It's because, well, one of the ideas going around is that if you have certain varieties or flavors of ADHD, you can't imagine the outcome. And so you are constantly caught with a brain that goes into overdrive, thinking of 50 different paths, and you can't focus enough. Whereas, and for an example, the outcome could be as simple as, I need to go to the dentist and my teeth will look better by the time I leave the dentist, right? That's not exactly how it works in an ADHD brain. You're looking at all these other things, but if you have a more normative brain, you go, my teeth will be shiny and white. That is the thing I'm imagining, right? And that's your motivation, and you go, great, I have it on the calendar, I do it, I just go, I'm there, my teeth get cleaned, I'm out, it's great. And if you have ADHD, you're like, I'm not thinking about my teeth being bright and shiny, I'm doing all these other things, and I'm like, oh wait, I have to set 5 alarms, and I have to, and that's a silly example, right? But if we take that and put it in a more practical scale, like, we have to be able to imagine the thing, a practical thing, that we're actually going to design. And if we can't imagine it, and as these conversations happen about inclusivity and about structuring spaces that are welcoming to people, what I hear from my perspective, right, I'm an out trans person, and that's public with our store opening and everything, and that puts me in a risky place at times. It also means that I'm listening to a lot of the conversations that happen from a different perspective, right? I'm white, but I'm trans. And I'm thinking of a world that is not built to accept me. So what do I want to imagine? And then listening to what's happening is I hear a lot of folks saying, I have no idea what I'm supposed to imagine. You're saying that we're doing this wrong, and having the piece around accepting something, that's a huge step, right? Accepting that. But we have to be able to be able to define the thing that we want in the end. Otherwise, we're gonna flail, and we're gonna be fearful, and we're gonna lash out at people around us, and we're gonna write really restrictive policies sometimes to try to lessen that fear of what could happen, the what could happens, fear. So it's bringing it back and saying we have to imagine a thing that is practically addressing what I always want to bring it back to, the care for our community, but starting with the care for our staff. And I talk about it at every staff meeting because we always have new staff, right? There's a lot of turnover in grocery, no matter what, because you always have college students and high school students, and they move on. So you always have new people coming through who don't know the culture, who are being acquainted with all of this. And so we have 2 all staff meetings a year right now. We have biannual staff meetings, and I love to just be really upfront and say, like, if the co-op landscape of things were my children, we have the board, we have the shoppers, we have the members, we have the staff. The staff are my favorite child. They always will be, right? And so when we think about how we're structuring things, I want to always start and be reminded, if I forget, to always start with the care for our staff. Because if we structure everything off of that, then we're going to we have that thing. That is the thing I have in front of me. And so that's a very tangible thing that I can then structure our policy around. And I can do the same thing with shoppers. I can do the same thing with members. But if I we're writing a policy, we just wrote a new returns policy, right? And what if we write the returns policy being mindful of how staff have to deal with people who then want to do a return? Whose problem are we making it, right? All of that. And it brings it down. Because we can go, oh my God, there's so many things that could go wrong with a returns policy. And our front end manager did some lovely research around what exists. The answer is most people don't post the returns policy, so it's really hard to see what exists. But at the end of the day, it has to be very brief, very specific, and very tangible. And it has to be something that is easy to interpret from a shopper's perspective and easy to fulfill for our frontline staff. We do not exist without our frontline staff. So let's make sure we always bring it back to that, right? I totally am not, Gabby called it, I'm not even going off my slides right now. Let's maybe go to the next one. Oh, we skipped. But this is kind of what we're talking about. But that concept, that idea should then get embedded into everything that we're doing. So thinking about a lot of the kind of building block pieces that Gabby was talking about, it has to get put into everything, right? So we have to live this beyond just that written piece, right? So we've imagined it, We then are attempting to build it. And I always want to be very upfront that it is not perfect. We will rewrite it. There's a revision date on policy documents. I hope that date changes. I hope that staff in 2 years aren't seeing, when did we open? 2023 on policy documents in 2028. Because it means that we haven't stayed attentive to change and to the care that our staff needs as our space changes, right? But it goes beyond all those things. It goes into the building block pieces, the way that we structure our onboarding. In preparation of coming here, I was talking with our management team, and I just put out that, this is the topic that we're talking about. It's going to be fun, but also, what have you seen? Like, what are the impacts you've seen? And one person shared, like, our initial training, we did our job fairs, we brought everyone in, and Gabby and Dawn Sheridan came to do training for our staff, which was amazing. And somebody was really upfront and just was like, I hate trainings. I hate them. So I was like really not looking forward to the stuff. But it wasn't like a click and collect version of a training, because it was interactive and it was conversational. And it shared something which was the practical pieces of what the values and culture that we want to have in this space. And it was putting it out really up front. And it was very descriptive and literal to folks, and then they go, oh, okay, that's what this is. And that was their opt-out moment. Was also like, you're doing this and you have no obligation. You're getting this training, you're getting a major heads up of how we want to build the culture here, and you can walk away from that if you want. But if you're opting in, know that that's the standard that I hold myself to, that I hope you hold me to, and that I'm holding you to, and that you should hold each other to. And then continue to dig into that. And so this goes beyond. There's a lot of work that is beyond our actual training programs, and all, but those are a lot of these pieces, like the pieces that go into this. But we have to live those values every day. When we have new managers coming in and we're training those folks, I've every time there's some sort of, and hopefully nobody comes at me after this when I go back and they see this video and they're like, Sam, you talked about it's too much. But there's always a rub. If somebody comes from a more corporate background and has that experience of like a very structured, policy-based organization, right? And really rigid structure, and the policy said if you were 5 minutes late, that you got your first yellow card, you're 10 minutes late, and you get your second one, and then you're fired, right? And that's the policy. So why aren't we doing that, right? I was like, well, we don't have that policy here. So we wrote a policy that was supposed to meet people where they're at, which is transportation sucks. If you have to commute, things happen to your car. Sometimes the dog does eat your homework, all those things. And so we have a time and attendance policy that is based on communication. You're only in trouble if you fail to communicate with us about your lateness. That is it. You can be late. We are late. However, you're doing a massive disservice to your folks that you work with if you're going to be late and you don't call us and just let us know that you're not going to be there after that delivery. We have like 15 people within 4 minutes of the co-op. Just give us a heads up if we need more hands there, right? So we still hold people to that, and then we go, okay, that's not quite working the way we wanted. We need a different communication tool, because that whole like calling the store number, not quite working the way we want. Let's try it. So there have been some recommendations on apps. So let's try that, right? We have to be fluid to it, but we also have to recognize where people are in all of that. But managers who are coming from a more corporate background haven't always been happy with that because they're like, but somebody was late. And then I have to deal with their slack, and then I have to deal, right? So it's like, but why are they late is the question that I would ask first instead of that. And then we have to have these conversations, and we talk about how we approach the issue. And typically the first question after why is, have you actually talked to this employee about it? If this is a repeated pattern, like, where's the conversation? And not the write-up. Maybe take a note, just keep track if there is an issue that's going on. But where's the conversation? Why is this happening? Is there an issue at work that is preventing, like that psychological safety? Is that lacking? Is there a reason that somebody is really hesitating to come in? Or is there something at home? Is there a life issue? And so just having all of these ways beyond our paperwork that we are kind of embedding this into our day-to-day life, it leaves a lot open for interpretation, which is not comfortable. It means a lot more conversations, which is time consuming. So basically what I've said is it costs money. And that seems uncomfortable, but the outcomes from it actually don't cost us much money in the long term. We have yet to have to fire anybody for time and attendance issues. Not because we have not had those issues, but because we have then had conversations about why it's occurring. And more often than not, it's a home situation, it's a mental health situation, it's something that needs additional care, and that somebody who needs additional support. And sometimes it's that somebody's doing the wrong job. They just shouldn't have that job. And everybody now at this point, if you're cross-trained, you could say, I actually really like that part of it more. Doesn't always work. It's not like instant wish fulfillment. Great, you are now a member of the grocery team. Go there. But it means that we can have a little bit more flexibility in how we deal with the issues, give a little bit more hope of like there could be change that could happen throughout all of this. And it means that we have to regularly remind ourselves, if we're in a leadership position, of the impact of all of our actions and decisions on our frontline team, and keep grounded in that, because that is going to be the repetitious thing that we have to do, is stay grounded in the positional power we have, the impact it has on our customers, which then is the impact it has on our shoppers and has on the rest of the community, right? I saw a question here.
I was just curious, how many people are on your staff?
We have around 32 right now. Yeah. And so I say this knowing that this is I create a bigger problem for those of you who have a much larger staff, right? But it's a piece that I can imagine. And it's a piece that can have a physical implementation that's not ridiculous. But it requires intentional conversation and communication daily. And some folks will go like, I don't know how you talk to people. You're just like, you know what I do? And I've had to say this to some managers before. Like, I just walk up and I say, what's going on? Not on the sales floor, but off to the side. Like, what's going on? Like, I've noticed something's off. I have no idea what it is. I don't want to assume, but I want to know if there's something that we can do here at work, or if there's support that you need, or if you just need a buddy here at work that you can vent to before you hit the floor, so that you're not taking it out on everybody else, right? And that's basically it, being comfortable with being uncomfortable. These are all the things that we talk about within this work, right? That we have to be able to make ourselves uncomfortable in the process of making a space that might fit better for a lot more people. And that means that our variety of folks coming in might change over time, because folks will recognize and tell other people this is a workplace where people are trying to meet me where I'm at. Am I at time?
No, almost though.
Oh, almost?
Not almost at time, but
I might just skip a few slides.
I told you, you just try to write notes and stuff.
This is a tool. I can't advocate for a great place to work, but they have some, they generally support large corporations in trying to do belonging work in workplaces. And Tony Bond is one of their staff and wrote an article, and they came up with some of the components that they believe are what create a sense of belonging in a workplace. Avoiding favoritism, involving employees in business decisions, fair promotions, celebrating accomplishments, welcoming new employees. That's twice. That's great. And embracing the whole self. And these are important aspects of what we do, and they're all fairly, I think, abstract. So for me, it always comes back to, can we describe what that is? What does embracing the whole self mean, right? And can you, with your staff, actually break down, how they want to be appreciated? Some people hate it if you tell everybody else that they have a birthday, or if you really lift them up in front of the whole staff, or give them a shout out at a member meeting. Hate it. And then some people love it. It is their best moment, and it's what they want. And so finding out and knowing enough about the folks that you're working with to appreciate them the way they want to be appreciated. There's the saying of say something five times to 5 different ways until you find the way. So I would say do that as many times as you need to, as many ways as you need to, in order to figure out what works and what fits. And be willing and know that you're going to fail. Try as many things as you need to. Note the ones that work for you. Note the ones that were sort of working, maybe need adjustment, and then note the ones that didn't work and don't ever do them again. But keep that there, because the person who fills your role or who comes in after you in another role needs that list so that they don't go back and do the same thing. Because I think a regular employee complaint can be, oh my God, we just did that. Why are you doing that again? We really did, oh, because they didn't know. Well, that was highly preventable, right? We had a way that we could do that. So clear pathways and building systems that support advancement. This is just coming back to the clarity of the communication. How many of you could say that there is a posted or who could say at your co-op that everybody on staff knows how their job could change? Like how they could go into another role in the co-op? It's something that we could do without too much effort, though, right? It's like if you sat down and said, I'm only going to give you one page. I love one-pagers. Because nobody wants to read 15 when they could read one. And who could you put on one page the clear path? What does it take? Is it that you do have a clear policy book that says you can't be in violation of certain things, you can't have any on your record? Is there anything? That sounds pretty punitive, right? So instead, can you say, what are the growth pieces that you need to have fulfilled in your job to be eligible for this? Is it that you just need to have the curiosity, the interest, the passion? Or is it that you need certain technical skills? Be really upfront about that. Don't be afraid to define that, right? And that's a lot of these things come back to it. Can you have a clear definition of something? Can you have a clear path and imagine where you want to go? And then be very, very clear. I think I've walked up to one of my managers on many occasions and been like, was that too blunt? No, it was just really upfront. And I at times will be too blunt, but in an effort to not be misinterpreted, in an effort to make sure it's not unsaid. And I would much rather somebody have an issue with the thing that I said as clearly as I could, and then have productive conversation about why this is something we're going to try or why this is something we're doing, and maybe adjusting the path as a result, than being not clear enough, not having enough contribution from the team, and not thinking about the impacts enough. So brevity, clarity, documentation, and having ways that you build into your structure for folks who want to grow, who they can do that with, how they can do that. And I think that I've heard from a number of folks, I think that coaching and training may exist at a higher level than some of maybe the clarity that's needed on how do you adjust your role, but it's something that should be said. If I were to pull the room right now, what would you say is the biggest thing that would prevent you from participating in a difficult conversation or in a planning conversation around this kind of work? Do you have a thing that stands out to you? Is there a fear? Yeah.
So currently it's a really hot topic right now that our employee guidebook is only in English. And when it's been brought up to some folks that could make that change, the response was, well, where does it end? And it's no, it doesn't. So wherever the need is, that's where we need to go. And so I don't know how to have that conversation. It's going to be a hard conversation, but it needs to happen. But I don't feel like I have the information I need to appropriately have that conversation as a store level staff member.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're gonna. Oh no, I think somebody else needs the mic. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I can't hear you. I wasn't asking you.
Our employee manual handbook is only in English.
Oh, okay, got it.
Okay.
So it's how to have that conversation
Okay.
to get it.
Okay, I appreciate it.
fixed.
So sorry to cause that.
No.
That's okay. I needed more steps.
That is one of the questions that can be really difficult, or in the question category that can be really difficult, right? Because you're saying, from a practical standpoint, this is going to be a resource. This is a resource thing that you're bringing up. So how much money is it going to cost us? And I think that where does it end? Sometimes come from that place, right? And so when we're thinking about a problem coming up, it's if we're using a yes and model of how we do it, just start somewhere. We don't know where that ends. We don't know how many documents it's going to affect. We don't know how many new signs we're going to need to make. But you can be messy while you do it, and you can involve the community in conversation. And you know what might happen if you maybe we're struggling with the whole employee handbook. Maybe you start with some signs in the store and actually get community who is like, ooh, you did a thing. What else are you doing, right? Who else are you going to end up having in the conversation? What resource do you have in your community that could support it? It doesn't always have to come from the staff. There's a lot of community that we have that, I think Melinda was talking about that earlier in her presentation. Like, there's so much resource that exists around us, and we are a community organization. Why don't we look at other community organizations that could support us in this work? So from a resource perspective, which I think a lot of times we come back to the business decision. Is it in the budget? How many people is it going to take? How much time? All of that stuff. And say, why don't we start with what we can do, right? And where can we tackle it on a smaller level? And then how many more people can you get engaged with this? Who does it matter to? Who's it going to affect? If it is a business decision, how many more people would you bring in? How much, how much faster would it be to fill job positions if you could say that we are promoting like a multilingual space? So, yeah. All right, I'm getting the wind it up gesture from Gabby. Well, I am gonna like roll into Alana in a second. So just touching on this, because I think this came up a few times throughout the day today. Diversity is often seen as visual diversity. Gabby talked about this, right? We are 100% of the time going to be better as a collective if we think about the challenges that we're given and thinking about the community we could serve if we were more open-minded in the way we approach our policies, our structures, our actions. Even if that is not a community that you visually think is around you, who is around you? And who do you not see, who do you not have coming in because you are being reductive in your approach and that you're not providing a space. Gabby has a phrase, did we build it for you? So this is a challenge to utilize this thought about a diversity of perspectives and space and how it's structured with what could be, right? And who could be there. And if you affect change and you make something more, it's like intentional design and universal design, it can create a space that is going to be more supportive overall for everybody who comes in, whether they realized it could affect them or not, right? I'm going to move forward so that Alana has time. This is the business outcomes piece. So from a variety of data sources, including Harvard Business Review, if we work on workplace belonging, which is kind of what this section that I'm talking about is, right? The positive impacts, these are all positive, even the negative numbers there, right? Job performance goes up, turnover risk goes down, sick days go down. That whole psychological safety, not being engaged in the process of how we care for each other. If you know that you can come in and you can have the relief of having some open conversation about what's going on, you can talk about issues that come at work, you can talk about the effect that policies have and how they're not working for you, you're not going to call out as much, right? Financial targets are met at a higher rate, profitability goes up, and innovation goes up because you're creating a space that you're welcoming ideas. You may not be able to do all the ideas, but you should be doing enough of them that is affecting actual change in the space and that folks are feeling those impacts every day. And I'll leave it with this, just some quotes. James Baldwin, I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. Do not desire to fit in, desire to oblige yourselves to lead. Gwendolyn Brooks. and look closely at the present you're constructing. It should look like the future you're dreaming. Alice Walker. So first, can you imagine it? Do you know the steps you need to build it? Do you have care and community as you do so? And then who else does it invite in? What else does it affect? Because I'm talking about staff, right? That's what I focus on the most. But it has these ripple effects in everything we do. And Alana's going to talk about that. So.
Okay. I'm going to speak the least because I have to, not because I want to. So I'm going to slide through these slides. Definitely raise hands if you have questions. But essentially, so when I think of a co-op, you have your front door customer. You have your community coming in, they're purchasing. You have your side door customer. That's your employee. You're there to service those people. And then you also have your suppliers that are coming in your back door. So supply chain diversity is a real thing. Oftentimes I get the question of how do you do it? And it feels very hard and So we're going to talk about the obstacles, and then I'm going to end with strategies. So get excited. I won't have as much interaction just to decrease the amount of time, but I'm going to start with a question. Genuinely, if you're thinking of your co-op, what does your co-op risk losing socially, economically, or culturally when folks with minoritized identities aren't actively engaged or included? Real question. So I'm not only speaking race and gender, I'm genuinely speaking of exactly what Gabby and Sam were speaking of earlier. Now we're talking about your suppliers. When you mean local, who are you intentionally working to include? So we've all seen it. Earlier this year, Target said, wait, let me match you. So I don't know if you can read this bottom part, but essentially, so the top, Target is ending its diversity goals, joining other major companies, scaling back DEI programs. And on the bottom, it says the Minneapolis-based retailer said the changes to its belonging at the bullseye strategy would include ending a program it established to help Black employees build meaningful careers, improve the experience of Black shoppers, and to promote Black-owned businesses following the police killing of George Floyd in 2020. So if you check out the graph on the right, you'll see when they made their announcement in February. So it didn't take long. We've seen it happen. We also see what happened to Costco when they said, cool, you don't want them? We do. Come here, open arms. So it's a real thing. It happens. But what is the potential loss? Because it goes past the economic of what are the true losses of saying, no, it feels really hard. And we don't really know how to do this, but we're good. It's more than just saying we're going to roll back this one policy. Your potential losses of exclusion, and there are many, I'm going to try to go fast but not too fast. So for one, you lose the credibility and trust, not just of your employees, but of your community. If I don't see myself represented in any way in your store, why am I going? Who goes and shops in a store where you can't find anything you're looking for? When's the last time that's been fun? And I'll tell you, in my earlier days, I'll leave a whole cart. I came for eggs and milk and shampoo and conditioner, and you don't really have anything. So not only am I not going to finish my shopping, I'm probably not going to come back. So if you don't have what I'm looking for, and I don't see myself, and when I think of representation, I'm not just thinking of a Black or brown producer, I'm also thinking of products that I look for. Because culturally, it's different. I use hair milk. Do I have to go somewhere else? Because if that somewhere else has all the other things, I'm now their new customer. You also lose my loyalty. Because before, I was on your shopping program and giving you all of my dollars, but if you aren't taking that time to put me into your thoughts when you're doing your purchasing, I'm probably not coming back. And when I'm out shopping with my friends, we're not coming back. And when I'm buying gifts, we're not coming back. And where people ask me where I got this, now we're not coming back. So it's genuinely, you're losing my loyalty at a pretty high level. It's not just me, because I'm buying things for other people and I'm also getting excited about what I can find. You're really kind of losing your cultural relevance. So if you're saying this is what we're going to have, and that's really kind of it, and I'm leaving you suggestions because this is your co-op, and I've told you so many times, I would love to buy this from here because I see that you really like to buy local, and this person's actually right down the street, and this person checks all these boxes that you say that you check, but you still don't have it? Do you really even want me? It's fine, because you're saying it on your shelf. You're losing, of course, your brand reputation. You're losing your legitimacy, and you're really losing your community. We all in the co-op space know how important it is to have that conversation, not just amongst the people coming in the front door, but suppliers also talk to suppliers. In my co-op history, if you know where I started, where I ended, suppliers talk to suppliers because it's small, especially amongst your local suppliers. If you hear, I reached out to the merchandising department and they never responded, or they told me, we don't sell that here, or they told me, nobody's really gonna use that. They didn't even really answer my questions. They really didn't even give me a chance. And I'm in a supply circle. I'm in a supplier forum for the city and the county. Guess how many small business minority suppliers are about to be on your line? Very few. It's a much different conversation when your co-op has to go into the space and apologize. I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't see your email. Yes, you did. Yeah, you did. Oh, I didn't know. I actually met you. These are real conversations. These are honest conversations. So these are just initial potential losses. And I'll go into another question. If your co-op's products, programs, or policies exclude certain groups, how might that affect trust, participation, or long-term equity? So we've all been in that place where we've been overlooked for something. So I love this. I'll be honest, I have no idea, and these are stock photos, but it hit me. But we've all been in that place where we've been left out. Whether you tried out for a team and you're thinking, I've been practicing all summer, and then you realize that the team had really kind of been picked over the summer, and tryouts kind of didn't mean much. Or maybe you applied for a job, and you're thinking, okay, this is great, I know all the people, but you realize that they had kind of hired before they said they hired. I heard a couple people, that hit home for a couple people. Really? Or when you're looking around and thinking, so y'all had a meeting, and I was available. My Teams light was green. I was sitting in my office. Y'all didn't. Wait, but I've been here too long. Why was I not included? We've all felt that. We've all been that. At some point in your life, you've been that. So when we really talk about your suppliers and who we're looking for, it's always moving with intentionality. And you're not always going to get it right. And it's not always easy, but it is always keeping those eyes open. And when you're saying we intentionally want to make this impact, we're going to make this change, it's thinking of this feeling and saying, what do we have to lose? So let's talk about what this exclusion can affect. Really a lot of the same things. So we're speaking of trust, really your brand equity. When you exclude, we're talking about how many people will support a company that they don't feel like they're a part of. The minute Target said, we love y'all, but really we just want your money. No, I'd rather stay home. Or I'd rather go over here and give my money to people that support me. When we talk exclusion, we also talk about decreased participation. And we're not just talking about your employees, because now they've got this feeling of alienation. If I don't see myself, and I also don't see that I'm prioritized. I see that there's a sign in the window or there's something on our website, but I also see vendors come in and say, hey, how can I get on your shelves? And it's like, well, our shelves are full. I've heard that. Or when you hear, yeah, we have enough, or we have really big sellers in that, so we're really not sure. Really? We can't do anything? Okay. We're also talking about our community, because you never know who your small businesses are. You never know who your food entrepreneurs are. And also, it's the distal outcome of it. Because now I'm thinking, well, you're not listening to me and you're not representing me. Now my team members are like, dang, Alana was in a real good mood. What was that conversation? We're thinking about it's now spilling over. It affects your public image. News travels fast. These days, one Instagram post, one negative review, it's one thing if it's a lie. It's another thing if it's the absolute truth. You're not hitting it, which then causes you to lose your relevance. The grocery industry is fragile, so why are we not the location that people can try? We've seen the Shark Tanks where people are like, yes, we're going to invest. We don't have to put that money in. We just say, okay, let's see what you're ready for. Let's see what you can do. Are you ready to talk margin? Are you ready to talk order boards? This is what it's going to take. Because oftentimes, people will look and say, oof, let me go back to the drawing board. This retail thing is hard. Or how can you include them in what you're doing? Can they come to one of your co-op fairs? Can they be a featured vendor? Or are you prioritizing your already big brands? I've asked the question, why on all of our yogurt ads is it Chobani? Chobani's fine without being on the front if you have a local yogurt maker. Everybody knows what yogurt is. So when it's on sale, you've got your yogurt. But when you see that ad and you're like, oh, what's that one though? Maybe I'll try just one of those. Oh, maybe I'll try all of those. Chobani is fine. They're still sold everywhere else, but who's on the front of everything that we're doing? You're also starting to lose your innovation. How many people feel super motivated when they've just been told that they're doing something super wrong and they're not going to be a part of anything great? Who's like, man, I cannot wait to clock in. I'm going to clock in early tomorrow because it's going to be the greatest day of my life. No one, ever. And we're also talking about the long-term equity. The longer you go into continuing to do the status quo, the harder it is to undo that. So some strategies. I got 7 minutes. I'm the fastest one. You're welcome. So, get ready for some strategies. I'm going to try to go through these pretty quickly. We're going to see what happens. So how can we undo this? Tried and true strategies that can work, that do work. I will say I've tried them, I've done them, I've offered them to other people. An inclusive supplier policy. Not just writing it down, but actually doing this policy. So what does that look like? Prioritizing suppliers with marginalized identities. Let people know this is who you're buying from, and not just on the holiday or the month where the world wants to make them special, but all of the days. If I know this is what you're doing, oh, you're doing the hard work, so I don't have to look around and ask. You're doing the work. You've got the people that I want, so I'm actually just going to shop your whole store. This also looks like setting clear goals with accountability for the teams that are doing this work. This is going into your performance review, your yearly review. When we talk salary, these are your metrics. This is what we're doing every day of the year. So not just the one time when you come home from CCMA and you're jazzed and you have ideas, and then the next 364 days you're just not really sure. These are your new goals. Another is a tiered procurement strategy. So when we talk about suppliers, your local jam supplier is not going to have the same conversation as UNFI. UNFI's got this together. They do this every day. Your local jam supplier might be told, hey, do you have any pets in your house? Yeah, so you're going to have to maybe not do this at home. You're going to have to slow things down. Because honestly, we all had to learn to get to where we are. Nobody walked in and knew absolutely everything that they know for their job right now. So break these contracts into smaller pieces for your suppliers. Walk them through, make it more manageable, and make it palatable. Be intentional with it. And offer multi-tiered pathways to allow vendors to grow alongside the co-op. You can do it. All of these things can happen. Not all vendor can take a net 60 term on their financials. I know if I didn't get paid for 60 days, I'm gonna have to catch y'all later on that. Definitely not. Can you afford a net 14? Maybe just 5, 10 suppliers at a time. Grow them into something larger, because as they increase their capacity, so will you. Provide supplier education and capacity building. So when we're talking about who your partners are, who your vendor partners are, pull them together with the community, your small businesses, your chambers of commerce. Become friends with them. Let these areas know, hey, we're trying to grow this economy. Can you help us? Can we send our suppliers over to you? You're going to build your local and community wealth. I mean, let your suppliers know when you're shopping here, when you're sending your products here, we're supporting the living wages. We're giving insurance, things like that. Get your suppliers excited too. Simplify the process. I can't say that enough. Simplify the process. Just make it a portal on your website. Have somebody that people can talk to. It is very hard, and I know your merchandisers are busy, your buyers are busy, but if everybody's busy, it's never going to change. If you want it to happen, it will happen. I actually said earlier, if you wanted 100% of your staff to be CPR trained, you're never too busy for that. So if you genuinely want to make it simple, make it simple. It's how we all learned. We all had to ask a million questions, make it happen. Track and share your impact metrics. Share it with everybody, not just your board. Put it outside. Put it on the windows. Let people know, hey, we've got this many vendors. Put them in the front of your co-op fairs. Put them in the front of your advertisements. Let people know, hey, and also share your advertisements. If a small vendor is having an event, great. Let's cross merchandise. And you can also say, guess what? Our co-op is also supporting their work. Create a feedback loop. I cannot stress that enough. Listen to your vendors, and not just one day a year. Listen to them all year long. Ask, how are we helpful? Create that safe space, the same way we did for our employees. Create that safe space, and then collaborate on your shared values. So prioritize the vendors that are going for the climate change, your regenerative ag. Where are you showing up? How can we show up to support you? Oh, I was fast. Oh, I think I clicked something weird. And that's all.
Oh, okay.
Questions?
Any questions?
Look at me winning.
While y'all thinking about y'all questions that we only have 2 minutes for, I do want to remind you that your employees are vendors too. They're
Absolutely.
vending their time. So.
Any questions? For anybody? Yeah, questions for anybody.
Hi, question for Alana. If you realize, hey, we really need to do more for inclusive suppliers, and inclusive product mix, and you can't do everything all at the same time, what would you say is a good first step?
Ask your employees what's most important to them. Your employees are your biggest advocates. So when somebody walks in and looks confused and asks, where's the pasta sauce or something, they're going to, really in your training, if you're saying, don't just walk them to it, tell them your favorite. Talk to your employees. Where can we start? What do you love to do? I mean, it really worked when I was at Weaver Street. It really worked for us. We had our particular products and our particular vendors, and we got excited. Also, invite your vendors to talk to your staff. It's hard for people not to love people. Like in co-ops, we all know it. That's why we're all up here talking for 800 hours, because we love this. And so get those vendors in there and talk about the things. Because when you hear the excitement, when you're in an aisle and hear the excitement of an employee talking about the product and the vendor, and they also do this, and then they're going to do a demo on Saturday and all these things, you would be surprised how many people are like, you know what, I really wasn't even going to make spaghetti tonight, but I might now. So I would say, honestly, start with your staff. What would you like to see here on your shelves? How can we make that happen? And then also prepare your leadership for the process. Will be a little slower, but it's going to be much more worthwhile. Yeah.
I think it's a lot of good information that's been shared. Tama from New Orleans. One of the things I'm curious about is once loyalty has been breached, what are some ways that you can really put that back in place? Because I think the public reputation of cooperatives can be real challenge once the loyalty has been breached. So what is the work of restoring that loyalty?
Gabby, you want to hit that
I
one
do.
first?
Being vulnerable and honest.
Yeah.
I work with a co-op in the southern area, and still being recorded. And they lost some of the community through some decisions that were made. They were trying to figure out, because you need revenue to keep a store open, more so than you need shoppers, not just members, right? But a lot of people decided not to shop there due to the decisions that were made, at that co-op. And I suggested, I'm like, can you just be honest? Can you say sorry?
Right.
Like, can you stand in it?
Yeah.
And I think, again, like, I keep pointing. I think what we talked about earlier about modeling mistakes and saying that out loud, you can get people, to come back, share with it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you have to take accountability for something that wasn't your fault. Because at this point, it doesn't matter whose fault it is, but now we need support. And the second thing I would say is going back into the community. Many co-ops spend a lot of time in the community when they're doing that capital fundraiser, trying to get money and get support. And then now you step back because now you have to run the grocery store. Right, but still making sure that you show up in spaces and not just spaces with food. So beyond the farmer's market, beyond that KEL class that every co-op seems to teach, like just other things to find yourself in spaces, not only as a person that works at a co-op, but a person that's a part of that community. Yeah. Any other? We over time, so remember what I said about decolonizing time, so I don't want to hold y'all. Yeah. I think there's a drink ticket involved somewhere. But we'll stick around up front if y'all have more questions. Thank you for sharing space with us.
Thank y'all.